installment of our coping strategies. Today we're going to talk about being curious. This is a really important one. This is the most therapy-y of the strategies, and the one that I think is often overlooked. Breathing strategies are often sought out, even grounding exercises are often sought out, but one thing that gets overlooked a ton is the virtue and value of being curious with what's happening inside of us, especially when we feel under threat, especially when our environment doesn't feel safe. It's really hard to be curious about what's happening inside, but one of the most useful things we can do is we can get curious. We can get non-judgmental and attuned to what's happening inside of our bodies and inside of our brains. This is particularly important in this season where there's a lot of collective grief. There's a wonderful article, if you haven't checked it out, Harvard Business Review, about that discomfort you're feeling is grief. I encourage you to check that out. But it just kind of helpful reframe for this season is a lot of change, and what happens to us when we're under a lot of change. And that's gonna be different for everybody. And grief is different for everybody, and stress is different for everybody. And so I encourage you today, and maybe even right now, to kind of take stock, think about what's really gotten to you. What are the feelings that are, often they're feelings we're fighting with. What are the feelings that you're fighting with? The feelings that are coming up that you're like, I'm not supposed to feel that way. I'm not supposed to blank. I'm not supposed to think this thing. And so we often get into a place of should. And so that doesn't really serve things most of the time. Now, our feelings and our thoughts are deeply connected to our actions, and certainly actions affect other people. But starting with what's happening inside and being curious about it often allows it to transform. If you can get curious about a feeling, for instance, anger that's coming up that you don't even know where from, or you know where exactly from. It's from a loved one, it's from a coworker, and you're very clear, or it's for a government official. You're very clear about what you're angry about, but your reaction to it surprises you. And so it's often you get into a place of like, I'm not supposed to be that way around that thing. Or even a real sense of entitlement. I'm very much supposed to be this way. How can I think any other way about this than I do? And instead, can you take a step back from that feeling? Just a little bit. You don't have to get rid of that feeling. You're not trying to change that feeling. You just take a step back. Just mentally kind of be like, okay, wait, this is a thought. It's not all of me. This is a thought I'm having. Don't believe everything you think. Good old-fashioned therapy phrase, don't believe everything you think. Be able to ask each thought, is it true? Is it helpful? But also to welcome it and to remain curious, like, what is that? What's going on there? And to see, is it serving me? Is it trying to serve me and getting stuck? Often our anger is the bodyguard of hurt. And so our anger is there to protect us, to make us feel like we can be certain of something in a setting where there's not a whole lot that we feel like we can be certain of. But we often get overwhelmed by it instead of being curious with it, or we fight with it and don't want it to be there. And so can you slow down and notice, yeah, I'm angry. I'm really, really angry. Or I'm really, really sad. Or I just feel off. Nothing looks familiar. My routine has been uprooted. Can you be with that anger or that sadness as though it's another person, another child, or another part of you? Is a language that we use a whole lot. Can you think of it as, this is a part of me, and I can relate to it with compassion the same way I relate to other people in my environment with compassion. That anger has a story to tell, and it's probably trying to protect you in some way, or manage the situation in some way. So if you can get curious and say to yourself, like, okay, this anger is really getting on top of me and it's affecting my relationship with my kids or with my spouse. What does this anger need from me? What does it need? What does it believe will happen if I don't operate from that place. If I don't stay angry at my elected official, or I don't stay angry at my neighbor, or I don't stay angry at my parents or my kids, what does that part of me believe will happen? And oftentimes it's something having to do with protecting you. If I stop being angry, I'll get hurt. If I stop being angry, somebody I care about will get hurt. And the anger is there as a bodyguard. But can that anger have some other function that serves you and your loved ones a little more? Can it transform, and can you use it in a way that brings something constructive to the space? And maybe this is really abstract for you, and it's like, I don't even know how to have that kind of a conversation with my feeling or with my emotion. And so if that's the case, like, that's one of the places where therapy is really helpful, because a lot of times these feelings and thoughts can be really old stories. They come from old places of trying to protect us. And so to get some insight into those can be really useful. And also, sometimes just scheduling it. Like, if things are overwhelming and you find you're really preoccupied with a thought or a feeling, you can schedule time. This works often with grief, of like, I'm going to give myself this evening or this hour to just be in my feels, to just be in that space and really let it in and not struggle with it, not argue with it. And it just needs to be worked out and given space to just be. And sometimes it just transforms on its own when you do that. So I hope you'll adopt a attitude of curiosity when you can. Ask the question, what is this feeling longing for? What does it need? Can I give it what it needs? Can I give it what it needs in a healthy way? And if you want to talk more about this is a place where therapy is really helpful. There's lots of resources, and of course, I'm available to chat, and so you can always do that as well. And so, be curious, stay safe, and until next time,